The corporate Christmas party was in full swing when I realized my wife had been practicing being single. Not just acting single, actually rehearsing it, like lines for a play where I'd been written out without anyone telling me. I'm Jake Parsons, 38, project manager at Henderson Construction. I build things that last, fix problems that matter, and apparently married a woman who'd been auditioning for a different life behind my back. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Cassie stood across the hotel ballroom in that red dress I'd complimented 3 hours earlier, the one that made her smile the way she used to smile at me. Now she was giving that smile to everyone else, especially her boss, Eric Walsh, who was leaning against the bar like he owned the place, which, considering his family's money and his corner office, he probably felt like he did. She looks happy tonight, said my buddy Nate, appearing beside me with 2 beers. Nate's been my best friend since high school, works as a mechanic, and has a talent for saying exactly what I'm thinking, but don't want to admit. Yeah, she does. I took the beer, watching Cassie laugh at something Eric said. It was her genuine laugh, not the polite one she'd been giving me for months. Question is, happy about what? The signs had been there for weeks, maybe months. The way she'd stopped posting pictures of us together on social media, claiming she wanted to keep work and personal life separate. The way she'd started going to company events alone, saying I'd be bored. The way she'd begun talking about her marriage in past tense when she thought I wasn't listening. You're overthinking again, she'd say whenever I brought it up. Work's just stressful right now. You know how it is? But I didn't know how it was. My job was stressful too. Coordinating construction projects, managing crews, dealing with city permits and client changes. But I didn't come home acting like my wife was a roommate I was trying to avoid. Tonight was supposed to be different. The annual Henderson and Associates holiday party was the one company event spouses were expected to attend. Cassie couldn't very well show up alone to this one without raising questions. So here we were, together but somehow more apart than ever. I watched her work the room. She moved like she was campaigning for something, stopping to chat with the HR director Monica Chen, sharing inside jokes with Derek Sullivan from accounting, making sure to spend extra time with the executives. Every conversation looked natural, practiced, like she'd been building these relationships for a specific purpose. Jake, right? Eric Walsh materialized beside me, all white teeth and expensive cologne. Great to finally meet you. Cassie talks about you all the time. I shook his hand, noting how he held it a beat too long, like he was establishing dominance. All good things, I hope. Oh, absolutely. She's always saying how understanding you are, how you give her space to grow professionally. His smile was perfect, the kind you learn in MBA programs and country club dining rooms. Understanding. That was an interesting word choice. I believe in supporting my wife's career, I said carefully. That's so important in modern marriages. Not every husband is secure enough to let his wife shine. Eric glanced across the room at Cassie, who was deep in conversation with the company president. She's really going places here. We're lucky to have her. The way he said we made my skin crawl, like he was including himself in some exclusive club that didn't have room for me. She's talented, I agreed. Always has been. Oh, I know. We've been working very closely together on the Morrison account. Long hours, lots of late dinners, really getting to know each other's working styles. He paused, letting that sink in. You must be proud. I was starting to understand why Cassie had been so insistent that we keep things low-key tonight. Why she'd driven separately, why she'd asked me to arrive 30 minutes after her. She'd been setting a stage, and I was apparently the prop that didn't fit the scene she wanted to create. Excuse me, I said, leaving Eric at the bar. I needed to see this performance up close. I found Cassie by the dessert table, talking with Monica from HR and 2 other women I didn't recognize. As I approached, their conversation quieted in that way conversations do when the topic of discussion walks into the room. Ladies, I said, sliding an arm around Cassie's waist. She stiffened immediately, stepping slightly away from me. Oh, hi, honey, she said, her voice bright but strained. I was just telling Monica about the Morrison project. The one that's been keeping you out so late, I said. Eric was just mentioning how closely you 2 have been working together. Something flickered in Monica's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Like she knew something I didn't. Well, that project is really important for the company, she said carefully, and for Cassie's career trajectory. I'm sure it is. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. She was avoiding my eyes, focusing on her wine glass like it held the secrets of the universe. Cassie's always been ambitious. Ambition is so important, said one of the other women, especially for women in corporate environments. Sometimes you have to make difficult choices about what you prioritize. The subtext was so thick you could cut it with a knife. These women knew something. They were part of whatever story Cassie had been telling, whatever version of her life she'd been selling that didn't include me as anything more than an obstacle to overcome. Well, I said, I've always believed in putting your marriage first, but that's just me. Cassie's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with something between panic and anger. Jake, maybe we should dance? I suggested. Great idea. The small dance floor was crowded with couples swaying to some generic jazz number. I led Cassie to a spot near the center where we'd be visible to most of the room. If she wanted to perform, we might as well give everyone a good view. What are you doing? She whispered as I pulled her close. Dancing with my wife, I said, at a party where spouses are invited. Crazy concept, I know. You're being weird tonight. Am I? Or am I just being present in a way that doesn't fit whatever narrative you've been spinning? She missed a step, stumbling slightly. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. I spun her gently, noting how Eric was watching us from across the room. Tell me something, Cass. In the story you've been telling these people, what am I? The ex-husband? The estranged husband? Or just the inconvenient husband who doesn't understand how important your career is? You're being paranoid. Am I? Because Monica looked pretty surprised to see me act like we're actually married, and Eric seemed very interested in making sure I knew how closely you two worked together. The song ended, but I didn't let go of her. Instead, I leaned down like I was going to kiss her cheek, the kind of casual affection married couples share at social events. She jerked back like I'd tried to slap her. Don't, she whispered urgently, her eyes darting around the room. People are watching. So? We're married. People expect us to act like it. It's complicated right now. With work and the promotion possibilities and your boss might get the wrong idea if he sees you acting like you're actually committed to your husband? Her face went pale. You don't understand the dynamics here. Then explain them to me. She looked around frantically, like she was searching for an escape route. The music had started again, other couples moving around us, but we stood frozen in the middle of the dance floor like actors who'd forgotten their lines. Can we talk about this later, at home? Why? So you can have time to come up with a better story? Jake, please, you're making a scene. I looked around. A few people were glancing our way, probably wondering why we'd stopped dancing. Eric was still watching from the bar, his expression unreadable. You're right, I said finally. We should definitely talk about this later. I led her off the dance floor, my hand on the small of her back in what anyone watching would interpret as a protective, husbandly gesture. But I could feel the tension in her body, the way she was fighting not to pull away from my touch. We ended up back near the bar, in a quieter corner where the music wasn't quite so loud. Cassie immediately put some distance between us, pretending to check her phone. I need to use the restroom, she said without looking at me. Of course you do. She shot me a look that could have melted steel, then walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. I watched her go, noting how she stopped to whisper something to Monica on her way out. Trouble in paradise? I turned to find Derek Sullivan smirking at me, a martini in his hand and malice in his eyes. Derek was Eric's right-hand man, the kind of guy who thrived on office politics and other people's misery. Just married couple stuff, I said evenly. Right. Well, for what it's worth, I think you're handling it better than most guys would. Handling what? His smirk widened. Come on, Jake. We all know what's going on. The late nights, the business dinners, the way she's been repositioning herself lately. The urge to punch him was almost overwhelming. Instead, I took a sip of my beer and kept my voice level. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Look, no judgment here. These things happen. Corporate environments, attractive people working closely together, the thrill of ambition and success. It's practically inevitable. What's inevitable? People growing apart, wanting different things, moving in different directions. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Between you and me, I think she's just trying to let you down easy. The whole keeping work and personal separate thing, that's usually code for I'm already halfway out the door. My grip tightened on the beer bottle. You seem to know a lot about my wife's thinking. I know a lot about human nature, and I know Cassie's been asking a lot of questions lately about company policies regarding relationships, divorce proceedings, that sort of thing. Just saying. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing alone with the taste of bile in my mouth and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Cassie returned a few minutes later, her makeup freshened and her smile back in place. but something had changed in her absence. She seemed more resolved, like she'd made a decision about something. Better? I asked. Much. She moved to stand beside me, close enough to appear united, but not close enough to actually touch. Listen, about earlier. Forget it. No, I want to explain. It's just that things are really delicate at work right now. There's a lot of politics involved in this promotion, and Eric has been very supportive, and I just don't want to do anything that might complicate that relationship. Complicated how? Well, you know how it is. If he sees me as too settled, too comfortable in my personal life, he might think I'm not hungry enough for advancement, that I don't have the drive necessary for the position. I stared at her. So you need to appear unsettled, uncomfortable, available for the kind of dedication that might require sacrificing your personal life? That's not how I'd put it, but yes, essentially. And how long is this performance supposed to last? Just until the promotion is finalized. A few more weeks, maybe a month. And then what? We go back to being happily married? Of course. Why wouldn't we? I studied her face, looking for any sign that she believed what she was saying. But her eyes were too bright, her smile too practiced. She was selling this story to herself as much as to me. Okay, I said finally. Okay? If that's what you need to do for your career, I understand. Relief flooded her features. Really? You're not angry? Why would I be angry? You're just doing what you think is best for your future. Our future, she corrected quickly. Right, our future. The party was winding down around us. People were starting to say their goodbyes, collecting coats and calling for rides. Eric appeared at Cassie's elbow like he'd been waiting for his cue. Great party, he said, addressing both of us but looking only at her. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. We did, Cassie said quickly. Thank you for including Jake. Including Jake? Like I was a guest at my own wife's work event. Of course, though I have to say, you two don't look much like the typical corporate couple. What do typical corporate couples look like? I asked. Eric's smile was razor-sharp. More coordinated, I suppose, like they're on the same page about where they're going. We're on the same page, Cassie said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Are you? Eric looked directly at me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you might want different things. The moment stretched between us, loaded with subtext and unspoken challenges. I could feel Cassie's tension, could practically hear her mental calculations about how this conversation might affect her precious promotion. And that's when it hit me. The full scope of what had been happening, what was still happening, what was going to keep happening until someone had the courage to name it. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, at the way she was standing slightly closer to Eric than to me, at the way her body language was open and engaged when she faced him, closed and defensive when she turned toward me, at the way she kept glancing between us like she was waiting for permission to choose sides. The soft lighting in the hotel ballroom suddenly felt too bright. The gentle jazz music sounded like a funeral dirge, and my wife of 6 years, looked like a stranger wearing a familiar face. I leaned toward her, the way I had on the dance floor, the way I had 1,000 times before in 1,000 different places, seeking the simple comfort of physical connection with the person I'd promised to love and cherish. She pulled back sharply, her eyes wide with alarm. "Oh, don't do this," she whispered urgently. "My boss will think we are together." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not "we are married," or "we are a couple," or even "we are involved." Together, present tense. Like our relationship was something she'd been actively denying. Something that would damage her reputation if it were discovered. I stared at her for a long moment, watching the panic in her eyes. The way she kept glancing at Eric to see if he'd noticed. The way she was already preparing her next lie. And then I smiled. "Yeah, you're right," I said softly. "He might actually think we're in a relationship. Better not give him the wrong idea." Relief flickered across her face until I added, still smiling, "When we get home, you can sign the divorce papers. If you've been telling people we're done, we might as well make it official. Then we'll both be free." The drive home was silent except for the sound of Cassie's breathing, which had gone sharp and shallow after my announcement at the party. She'd tried to backtrack immediately, of course, grabbing my sleeve and whispering frantically about misunderstandings and taking things out of context, but I'd simply removed her hand, told her we'd discuss it at home, and walked away. Now we were in our driveway, sitting in my truck while she sat in her car, both of us apparently reluctant to continue this conversation inside the house we'd bought together 3 years ago. The house that suddenly felt like a stage set for a play that had closed without anyone telling the actors. I got out first. Cassie followed, her heels clicking on the concrete with sharp, angry sounds. "Jake, wait," she called as I unlocked the front door. "You can't be serious about this." I flipped on the lights, illuminating our living room with its carefully chosen furniture and wedding photos that now felt like evidence of a crime. Why not? You've clearly been serious about it for months. That's not true. I never said anything about divorce. You didn't have to. I loosened my tie, suddenly exhausted. Actions speak louder than words, Cass, and your actions have been pretty clear. She followed me into the kitchen, where I poured myself a glass of water and tried to organize my thoughts. The whole drive home, I'd been replaying the evening, seeing it through the lens of what I now understood. Every interaction, every conversation, every carefully orchestrated moment of distance between us. Explain it to me, I said, turning to face her. Help me understand how we got to the point where you're embarrassed to be seen with your own husband. I'm not embarrassed. Then what would you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been running a campaign to convince everyone at your office that you're available, single, unattached. She opened her mouth to deny it, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she sat down at our kitchen table, suddenly looking very small in her red dress. It's complicated, she said finally. Uncomplicated for me. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, there was something different in her eyes. Not panic anymore, but a kind of resigned determination. Do you remember when I started working at Henderson? She asked. Of course, 2 years ago. You were so excited about the opportunity. I was. It was everything I'd been working toward. Good salary, room for advancement, the chance to really build something. She paused. But I realized pretty quickly that being married was a disadvantage. How so? That the other women who were advancing, who were getting the good assignments and the attention from upper management, they were all single or divorced. They could work late without anyone questioning their priorities. They could travel at a moment's notice. They could be completely dedicated to their careers without having to balance anyone else's needs. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. So you decided to pretend you were one of them. Not pretend, not exactly. I just stopped mentioning you as much, stopped talking about our plans or our life together, started presenting myself as more, flexible. Available. Professionally available, yes. And personally? She looked away. I never crossed any lines, Jake. I never cheated on you. The fact that she felt the need to say that told me everything I needed to know about how close she'd come to crossing those lines. Maybe how close she still was. But you wanted to, I said. It wasn't a question. I wanted to succeed. I wanted the promotion, the recognition, the financial security. I wanted to matter in a way that I'd never mattered before. You matter to me. That's not the same thing. The words hung between us like a blade. I'd known our marriage had been struggling, but I'd attributed it to work stress, to the normal ebb and flow of long-term relationships. I hadn't realized that she saw me, saw us, as an impediment to her real life. So what's the plan? I asked. You get the promotion, and then what? We go back to playing house until the next opportunity comes along? I hoped we could work through this, that once things settled down at work, we could figure out how to make both things work. Both things being your career and our marriage. Yes, in that order. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I walked over to the cabinet where we kept important documents and pulled out the folder I'd been avoiding for months. The one my lawyer had prepared after the last time we'd had this conversation, back in September when she'd come home from a work dinner at midnight with wine on her breath and someone else's cologne on her clothes. You want to know the funny thing? I said, setting the folder on the table between us. I already had these drawn up. 3 months ago, after you started coming home late and acting like I was a stranger. I just couldn't bring myself to serve them. She stared at the folder like it was a bomb. Jake, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. Can we? Because it seems to me like you've already made your choice. You've been living like a single woman for months, telling everyone at work that you're available for whatever opportunities come along. The only thing missing is the paperwork. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You know what's not fair? Having to watch your wife audition for a different life at a Christmas party. Having her boss smirk at you because he knows something you're just figuring out. Having your own wife flinch away from you like you're some kind of threat to her reputation. Tears were running down her cheeks now, but I found I didn't care as much as I should have. The part of me that would have moved to comfort her, that would have done anything to make her happy, had gone quiet. I love you, she whispered. Do you? Or do you love the idea of having someone to fall back on if your other plans don't work out? That's cruel. It's honest. Which is more than I can say for anything you've told me in the past 6 months. She wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup. So that's it? 6 years of marriage and you're just giving up? I'm not giving up, Cassie. I'm accepting reality. You checked out of this marriage months ago. You've been building a life that doesn't include me, making plans that don't factor in my needs or feelings or dreams. You've been treating me like a roommate you're trying to politely evict. I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen this way. And tonight, when you had the chance to choose, when you could have stood by your husband or continued your performance for your boss, you chose the performance. I opened the folder and pulled out the papers, setting them in front of her along with a pen. So, let's make it official. Let's give you what you've been working toward all this time. She stared at the documents, her hands shaking. What if I don't sign? Then we'll do this the hard way. But either way, we're done pretending that this marriage is something it's not. And what is it? A mistake, I said quietly. For both of us. She picked up the pen, then set it down again. I need time to think. You've had months to think. What you need is the courage to finish what you started. Jake, sign the papers, Cassie. Set us both free. She looked at me for a long moment, searching my face for something, forgiveness maybe, or a sign that I was bluffing. But I was done bluffing. Done pretending. Done being the understanding husband who enabled his wife's betrayal by refusing to name it. She signed her name in quick, angry strokes, then pushed the papers back toward me. There, she said. Happy now? No, I said honestly, but I'm not miserable anymore, and that's a start. The next morning, Cassie was gone before I woke up. She'd packed a bag and left a note saying she was staying with her sister Rachel until we could figure out the logistics. The house felt different without her, not empty exactly, but like a held breath finally released. I called in sick to work and spent the morning on the phone with my lawyer, Tom Bradley, who'd been handling construction contracts for me for years before becoming my reluctant divorce attorney. She signed them? Tom sounded surprised. Just like that? Just like that. I was sitting in my kitchen, staring at the papers that had ended my marriage with a few strokes of a pen. What's next? Well, we file them with the court, serve her with a copy through her attorney, assuming she gets one, and then we wait. In the meantime, you might want to think about what you want in terms of asset division, spousal support, that kind of thing. I don't want anything from her, Tom. I just want out. I understand the sentiment, Jake, but you need to be practical here. You've got the house, your business interests, retirement accounts. This isn't the time to be generous. But I wasn't feeling generous. I was feeling something else entirely. A cold, calculating anger that was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Cassie had played a long game with our marriage, carefully positioning herself for maximum advantage while keeping me in the dark. Now it was my turn to play. Actually, I said, I want you to be very thorough about the asset investigation. Bank accounts, credit cards, any large purchases or unusual expenses in the past year. I want to know exactly how she's been spending our money. Looking for evidence of an affair? Looking for evidence of anything that might be relevant to the proceedings. Tom was quiet for a moment. Jake, I have to ask, are you sure about this? Because once we start down this road, there's no going back. Things are going to get ugly. They're already ugly, Tom. They've been ugly for months. I'm just finally admitting it. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet house and tried to figure out what came next. In the space of 12 hours, I'd gone from being a married man to being a soon-to-be divorced man, and I wasn't sure how to process that transformation. My phone buzzed with a text from Nate. Heard through the grapevine that you and Cassie had some drama at the party last night. You okay? I stared at the message, wondering how news traveled so fast in a city of 2 million people. Then I remembered Derek Sullivan's smirk, Monica Chen's knowing looks, the way everyone at the party had seemed to be waiting for something to happen. Instead of texting back, I called him. Jesus, Jake, Nate said by way of greeting. What the hell happened? How much do you know? I know Samira's cousin works in accounting at Henderson, and she heard from someone who was there that you and Cassie had some kind of public confrontation, something about divorce papers. Samira was Nate's girlfriend, a smart woman who worked as a paralegal and had opinions about everything. If she was hearing gossip about my marriage, it meant the story was already making the rounds. We're getting divorced, I said simply. Shit. I'm sorry, man. What happened? Was it the thing with her boss? What thing with her boss? Nate was quiet for a moment. Maybe I shouldn't... Nate, what thing with her boss? Samira mentioned that her cousin had heard rumors about Cassie and Eric Walsh. Nothing concrete, just rumors. Office gossip. You know how it is. I did know how it was, and I was starting to understand that I'd been the only person in the city who hadn't known how it was. Can you come over? I asked. I could use the company. On my way. Nate showed up an hour later with a 6-pack of beer and a bag of takeout from our favorite deli. He took one look at me and shook his head. "You look like hell," he said, settling into the chair across from my kitchen table. "I feel like hell." "So what's the plan?" "The plan? Come on, Jake. I've known you for 20 years. You don't just roll over when someone screws you. What's the plan?" I'd been asking myself the same question all morning. The old Jake, the married Jake, would have focused on damage control, trying to salvage what could be salvaged, minimize the pain for everyone involved, take the high road. But the old Jake had been played for a fool. The old Jake had been so busy being understanding and supportive that he'd missed his wife's systematic dismantling of their marriage. The new Jake was interested in different things. "I want to know everything," I said. About her, about Eric, about how long this has been going on and who else knew about it. To what end? To the end of making sure she doesn't get to rewrite history. She wants to be the victim in this story, the ambitious woman held back by her unsupportive husband. I want to make sure people know the truth. Nate studied my face. That's not like you. Maybe the old me, but the old me was married to someone who respected him. The old me didn't have to watch his wife perform being single at a Christmas party. Fair enough. He opened a beer and slid it across to me. So how do we start? The "we" hit me harder than it should have. After months of feeling isolated and confused, having someone unequivocally on my side felt like a lifeline. "Samira's cousin," I said. "What's her name?" "Lisa Park. She's worked at Henderson for about 5 years, knows everyone, sees everything." "Think she'd be willing to talk?" "About office gossip? Are you kidding? She lives for this stuff." We spent the next hour planning what Nate called Operation Truth and Reconciliation, a systematic investigation into my wife's secret life. It felt good to have a project, something concrete to focus on, instead of just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. By the time Nate left, I had a list of people to contact, questions to ask, and a growing sense that I was about to uncover things that would make last night's revelation look like the tip of the iceberg. My phone rang as I was cleaning up the takeout containers. Rachel, Cassie's sister. "Jake, I heard about last night. Are you okay?" Rachel was the opposite of Cassie in every way that mattered. Straightforward where Cassie was calculating. Loyal where Cassie was opportunistic. If anyone in Cassie's family was going to tell me the truth, it would be her. "I'm fine, Rachel. How's Cassie?" "Honestly, she's a mess. She keeps saying you misunderstood what happened, that she never meant for things to go this far." "What did she tell you?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. "She said you got jealous at the party and made a scene, that you're forcing her to choose between her marriage and her career. And what do you think? I think my sister has been acting strange for months. I think she's been making choices that don't make sense for someone who's happily married, and I think you deserve better than whatever game she's been playing." The validation felt like a warm blanket on a cold night. "Thank you for saying that." "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Are you really done, or is this just a wake-up call?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Was there a part of me that hoped Cassie would fight for our marriage, that she'd realize what she was losing and come back with apologies and promises to change? "I'm really done," I said, and meant it. I can't be married to someone who sees me as an obstacle to overcome. "Then I'm sorry, but I'm also proud of you for standing up for yourself." After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but the absence of the constant low-level anxiety that had become the soundtrack of my marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Lisa Park, Nate's friend. Heard you might want to chat. I get off work at 5 if you want to grab coffee." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Absolutely. Name the place." The game was just beginning. Lisa Park turned out to be a small woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and an encyclopedic knowledge of Henderson and Associates office politics. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far enough from her workplace to avoid any awkward encounters with her colleagues. "So," she said without preamble, "you want to know about your wife and Eric Walsh?" "I want to know about anything that might be relevant to my divorce proceedings," I said carefully. Lisa smiled. "Lawyer told you to be circumspect, huh? Don't worry, I get it. But between you and me, there's a lot to know." She pulled out her phone and scrolled through what looked like an extensive collection of photos and screenshots. "I'm kind of the unofficial office historian," she explained. "I pay attention to things, patterns, changes in behavior." "Such as?" "Such as the fact that your wife started staying late about 8 months ago, right around the time Eric got promoted to department head. such as the fact that they've been seen having dinner together at least twice a week for the past 3 months, always at places far enough from the office that they wouldn't run into coworkers. She showed me a photo of Cassie and Eric at a restaurant I didn't recognize, sitting close together, her hand on his arm. The timestamp showed it was taken 6 weeks ago, on a night when Cassie had told me she was working late on a project. How did you get this? My boyfriend works for a catering company. He was doing an event at the restaurant next door and saw them through the window. Thought it was weird since everyone at the office knows Cassie's married. Everyone knows? Well, they used to. But she's been pretty quiet about her personal life lately. Stopped wearing her wedding ring about 2 months ago, stopped mentioning you in conversations, started acting like she was available for after-hours socializing. The wedding ring detail hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd noticed she wasn't wearing it as often, but she'd claimed it was because she'd gained weight and it was too tight. What else? Lisa scrolled through more photos. Company retreat last month, Cassie and Eric disappeared for about 3 hours on Saturday afternoon. Officially, they were working on the Morrison presentation. Unofficially? She showed me a photo of them returning to the hotel together, both looking disheveled and guilty. This is all very helpful, I said, but it's still circumstantial. I need something more concrete. Like what? Like evidence that she's been using marital assets to fund this relationship. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts, anything that shows she's been spending our money on her affair. Lisa's eyes lit up. Oh, I can definitely help with that. Derek Sullivan in accounting is a friend of mine, and he processes the expense reports. If Eric's been putting personal expenses through the company, or if Cassie's been doing anything questionable with her corporate credit card, Derek would know. Would he talk to me? Derek? Probably not directly. He's too worried about his job, but he might talk to me, and I could pass along whatever he says. We spent another hour going through Lisa's intelligence files, which were more comprehensive than anything the FBI might have compiled. She had photos, timestamps, witness accounts, and a detailed timeline of my wife's relationship with her boss. Can I ask you something? Lisa said as we were wrapping up. Why now? I mean, this has been going on for months. What made you finally decide to do something about it? I thought about the Christmas party, about the look of panic in Cassie's eyes when I'd tried to kiss her, about the way she'd whispered that her boss might think we were together. She stopped pretending, I said. For 8 months, she's been living a double life, but she was still making an effort to maintain the illusion at home. Last night, she dropped the act. She made it clear that being married to me was an embarrassment, something that could damage her reputation. And that was the line for you. That was the line. Lisa nodded approvingly. Good for you. Too many people put up with way worse for way longer. As we were leaving, she handed me a flash drive. Everything I showed you, plus a few things I didn't have time to go through. Consider it a divorce present. That evening, I sat at my computer going through Lisa's files. The scope of Cassie's deception was breathtaking. Not only had she been having an affair with Eric, but she'd been systematically building a new social and professional identity that excluded me entirely. There were photos of company events I'd never heard about, dinners with colleagues I'd never met, weekend trips that had been described to me as mandatory training seminars. There were screenshots of social media posts where she'd been tagged at parties and gatherings, always without her wedding ring, always positioned as if she were single. Most damaging of all were the credit card statements Lisa had somehow obtained, showing charges at expensive restaurants, hotels, and boutiques on dates when Cassie had told me she was working late or attending boring work functions. My phone rang around 9 o'clock. Cassie. Jake, we need to talk. I thought we said everything we needed to say last night. I've been thinking about what happened, and I realize I handled things badly. I want to explain. There's nothing to explain, Cassie. I understand perfectly. No, you don't. You think I've been having an affair, but that's not what this is. Eric and I have a professional relationship that's been misinterpreted by people who don't understand the dynamics. Stop. What? Just stop. I know about the dinners, the hotel meetings, the company retreat. I know you've been telling people at work that we're separated. I know you haven't been wearing your wedding ring for 2 months. Silence on the other end of the line. I also know, I continued, that you've been using our joint credit card to pay for these professional dinners and hotel meetings, which means you've been using my money to fund your affair. Jake, I can explain all of that. I'm sure you can. You've gotten very good at explaining things. But I'm not interested in hearing any more explanations. I'm interested in facts. And the facts are that you've been lying to me for months, cheating on me with your boss, and using our shared resources to do it. That's not... The divorce papers have been filed, Cassie. You'll be served officially within the next few days. After that, all communication goes through the lawyers. I hung up before she could respond, then turned off my phone. Tomorrow, I'd start the next phase of my investigation. Tonight, I just wanted to sit in my quiet house and plan my next moves. The old Jake would have felt guilty about the satisfaction he was taking in this process. The new Jake was just getting started. 3 days later, I was back at work, trying to focus on a foundation inspection report when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Eric Walsh. We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's Bar on 5th Street at 6 p.m. Come alone." I stared at the message for a long moment, then forwarded it to Tom Bradley with a note. "FYI, the other party wants to meet." Tom called me back within 5 minutes. "Don't go, Jake. Nothing good can come from this conversation." "Maybe not, but I'm curious what he has to say." "He's going to try to intimidate you, or buy you off, or convince you that this is all a misunderstanding. Standard playbook for guys like him." "And what if he does?" "Then you record the conversation and use it against him in court." I thought about that. Is that legal? In this state? As long as one party consents to the recording, yes, and you'd be the consenting party. At 5:45 p.m., I walked into Murphy's Bar with my phone set to record and a small digital recorder in my jacket pocket. Eric was already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Jake," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Thanks for coming." "Eric?" I ignored the offered handshake and slid into the seat across from him. "What can I do for you?" He signaled the waitress for 2 beers, then leaned back in his seat, studying me. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about the situation with Cassie." "What kind of misunderstanding?" "She's told you that we're having an affair, but that's not accurate. We have a close working relationship, yes, but it's entirely professional." I almost laughed. "Is that what she told you? That she confessed to having an affair?" Eric's confident expression faltered slightly. "Isn't that what happened?" "What happened is that I caught her pretending to be single at a Christmas party, confronted her about months of suspicious behavior, and filed for divorce. She never admitted to anything." "Then why are you so convinced something inappropriate has been going on?" I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Lisa's photos, the one of him and Cassie at the restaurant, her hand on his arm, both of them looking very much like a couple on a date. Eric stared at the photo, his face going pale. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter? The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have about 50 photos like this one, plus credit card records, witness statements, and a timeline that shows you and my wife have been carrying on an affair for at least 8 months. The question is whether you want this to become public knowledge or whether you'd prefer to handle it privately." Eric was quiet for a long moment, turning his beer bottle in slow circles on the table. "What do you want?" "I want the truth. I want to know how long this has been going on, who else knows about it, and what your intentions are regarding my wife." "My intentions? Are you planning to marry her? Leave your wife for her? Or is this just a convenient arrangement that you'll drop as soon as it becomes inconvenient?" Eric's jaw tightened. "I don't think that's any of your business." "It became my business when you started sleeping with my wife. It became my business when she started using our joint assets to fund your relationship. It became my business when she started lying to me about where she was spending her time." "Look, Jake, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm past upset. I'm at the point where I'm deciding how much damage to do on my way out." Eric leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I can make this very public and very ugly, or I can keep it relatively contained. Your choice." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm giving you options. Option 1. You end whatever this is with Cassie immediately, transfer her to a different department, and we pretend this conversation never happened. Option 2. I take everything I know to your wife, your boss, and anyone else who might be interested in your professional conduct." Eric's face was flushed now, his hands clenched into fists on the table. "You can't prove anything." "I can prove plenty. The question is whether you want me to." "And what about Cassie? What happens to her in your little revenge fantasy?" "Cassie made her choices. She can live with the consequences." Eric stood up abruptly, throwing a 20 on the table. "You're making a mistake, Jake. You don't know who you're dealing with. Neither do you." He stormed out, leaving me alone with 2 untouched beers and the satisfaction of knowing I'd rattled him. I turned off the recording app and texted Tom, "Got it all. You're going to love this." But my satisfaction was short-lived. As I was leaving the bar, my phone rang. "Nate." "Jake, where are you?" "Murphy's Bar. Why?" "You need to get home. Now." "What's wrong?" "Someone broke into your house." I made it home in 15 minutes, adrenaline flooding my system. Nate was waiting in my driveway with Samira and 2 police officers. The front door was standing open, and I could see broken glass scattered across the entryway. "What happened?" I asked the older of the two cops, Officer Martinez. "Neighbors reported sounds of breaking glass around 5:30 p.m., he said, consulting his notebook. When we arrived, the front door was unlocked and there were signs of forced entry through the back sliding door. Anything missing? That's what we need you to determine, but from what we can see, this wasn't a typical burglary. Nothing obvious was taken. TV's still here, computer equipment, jewelry box in the bedroom appears untouched." I walked through the house with Martinez, cataloging the damage. Someone had gone through my desk drawers, scattered papers across the floor, and overturned couch cushions. In the bedroom, the closet had been ransacked and dresser drawers pulled out. "They were looking for something specific," I said. "Any idea what?" I thought about the flash drive Lisa had given me, which was currently locked in a safe deposit box at my bank. I thought about the recorded conversation I just had with Eric. I thought about the timeline of the break-in, which had occurred while I was meeting with Eric at Murphy's bar. "Yeah," I said. "I have an idea." After the police left, Nate helped me clean up the worst of the damage while Samira made coffee and tried to convince me to stay at their place for the night. "This wasn't random," Nate said as we righted the overturned furniture. "Someone wanted to send you a message. Or find something I have that they don't want me to have." "The photos?" "Among other things." Samira emerged from the kitchen with 3 mugs of coffee and a grim expression. "Lisa called. She heard about the break-in through the office grapevine." "How did the office grapevine hear about it already?" "Because Derek Sullivan has been telling people that you've been harassing Cassie and Eric, making threats, acting unstable. He's been setting up a narrative that makes you look like the dangerous ex-husband who might do something crazy." I sat down heavily on my couch, suddenly exhausted. So if something happens to me, they've already established that I'm the unstable one. "Nothing's going to happen to you," Nate said firmly. "But we need to be smart about this. These people are playing hardball. Then we play harder." Samira and Nate exchanged a look. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means it's time to stop being reactive and start being proactive. They want to paint me as the dangerous one? Fine. Let's give them something to really worry about." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Deacon Webb, an investigative journalist who'd done a series on corporate corruption the previous year. "Deacon, it's Jake Parsons. We met at the construction industry conference last spring. I have a story you might be interested in." Deacon Webb turned out to be everything I'd hoped for in an investigative journalist: thorough, relentless, and completely unimpressed by corporate power structures. We met the next morning at a diner across town, where I laid out everything I had: photos, financial records, witness statements, and the recorded conversation with Eric. "This is good," Deacon said, scrolling through the files on Lisa's flash drive. "Really good. Corporate executive using company resources to conduct an affair, employee using joint marital assets to fund the relationship, possible intimidation tactics including breaking and entering. Can you use it?" "I can use all of it, but I need to verify everything independently, get statements from sources, maybe catch them in the act if possible." "How long will that take?" "A week, maybe 2. But Jake, you need to understand. Once this story runs, there's no going back. These people's lives are going to be destroyed. Their careers, their marriages, their reputations. Are you sure you want to go that far?" I thought about the look of panic in Cassie's eyes when I'd tried to kiss her at the Christmas party. I thought about Eric's smug confidence, Derek's malicious gossip, the way they'd all been so certain that I was too weak or too stupid to fight back. "I'm sure." "All right then, let's destroy some lives." Deacon was as good as his word. Over the next 10 days, he conducted a masterful investigation that uncovered not only the affair between Cassie and Eric, but a pattern of similar behavior going back years. Eric had a history of getting involved with subordinates, using company resources for personal expenses, and leveraging his position for sexual favors. More damaging still, Deacon discovered that Cassie wasn't Eric's first victim, or his only current one. There was another woman in the marketing department, Jennifer Hayes, who'd been having a similar relationship with Eric for the past year. "Your wife wasn't special," Deacon told me over the phone. "She was just convenient. Eric's been running a harem out of his office, and she was the latest addition." The story ran on a Friday morning with the headline, "Corporate Executives' Web of Affairs Funded by Company Resources." It was devastating, detailed, and completely factual. By noon, it had been picked up by 3 other news outlets and was trending on social media. My phone started ringing at 12:15 p.m. First Tom Bradley, then Nate, then Rachel, then numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail and went for a long walk around my neighborhood. When I got back, there were 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The most interesting one was from Derek Sullivan. "You just destroyed a good woman's life. I hope you're proud of yourself." I texted back, "She destroyed her own life. I just documented it." The fallout was swift and comprehensive. Eric was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Cassie was transferred to a different department and demoted. Derek, who'd been identified in the article as someone who'd helped cover up the affairs, was fired outright. But the most satisfying development came 3 days later, when Deacon called with an update. "Eric's wife filed for divorce this morning," he said. "Apparently she'd suspected something was going on, but didn't have proof until she read the article. She's taking him for everything he's worth." And Jennifer Hayes? Also filing for divorce. Turns out her husband is a corporate attorney who specializes in employment law. He's talking about filing a sexual harassment suit against Henderson and Associates. What about Cassie? What about her? She's radioactive now. No one in the industry is going to touch her after this. She'll be lucky to find work as a secretary somewhere. I should have felt guilty about that. The old Jake would have felt terrible about destroying someone's career, even someone who'd betrayed him. But the new Jake felt only a cold satisfaction. Cassie had made her choices, calculated her risks, and rolled the dice. The fact that she'd lost wasn't my fault. That evening, I was sitting on my back porch with a beer, enjoying the quiet, when my doorbell rang. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Cassie. She looked terrible, eyes red from crying, hair unwashed, wearing the same clothes she'd had on in the newspaper photo that had accompanied Deacon's article. She looked like someone who'd just watched her entire world collapse. "Can I come in?" she asked. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, Jake. I just need 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the edge of my couch like she was afraid it might bite her, while I remained standing by the door. "You destroyed me," she said without preamble. "No, I didn't. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure people knew about it." That article, it made me look like some kind of predator, like I was using Eric for his money and position. "Weren't you?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "It wasn't like that. I cared about him. I thought he cared about me." "Did you care about him when you were lying to me? When you were using our money to pay for your dates with him? When you were telling people at work that we were separated?" I was confused. I was trying to figure out what I wanted. "No, you weren't. You were hedging your bets. You wanted to keep me as a backup plan while you auditioned for a better life with Eric. The only thing you were confused about was how to manage the optics." She started crying then, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "I lost everything, Jake. My job, my reputation, my future. Eric won't even return my calls. He's acting like I seduced him, like this was all my idea. Probably because that's the story his lawyer told him to tell. I have nothing left. You have your freedom. Isn't that what you wanted?" She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I want you to call that reporter. Tell him you lied, that you made it all up because you were jealous and angry." I stared at her for a long moment, amazed by her audacity. Even now, even after everything that had happened, she was still trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. "Get out," I said quietly. "Jake, please. Get out of my house, Cassie. Get out and don't come back." She left without another word, and I watched through the window as she sat in her car for several minutes, crying into her hands. Eventually, she drove away, and I never saw her again. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Cassie didn't contest anything. She couldn't afford a lawyer, and she had no leverage to negotiate with. I kept the house, the cars, and most of our shared assets. She kept her debts and her ruined reputation. Tom Bradley called it the cleanest divorce settlement he'd ever handled. "She's not even asking for spousal support," he said. "I think she just wants this to be over." "Good, so do I." 6 months later, I ran into Lisa Park at a coffee shop downtown. She looked happier than I'd ever seen her, and she told me she'd gotten a promotion after Derek Sullivan's firing had created an opening in the accounting department. "You know," she said, "I always thought you were too good for her." "Yeah? Why's that?" "Because you never played games. You were just honest, straightforward. She was always scheming, always calculating angles. It was exhausting to watch." "What's she doing now?" "Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents and got a job at a call center. Eric's wife took him for everything in their divorce, and he's working at some small firm in another state. Jennifer Hayes got a huge settlement from Henderson and moved to California. And Derek? Couldn't find another job in the city. Word got around about what he'd been doing, covering for Eric's affairs and harassing the wives of employees. He moved somewhere down south, I think." I nodded. feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The people who'd conspired against me, who'd thought I was too weak or too stupid to fight back, had all faced consequences for their actions. Justice had been served, even if it had taken a while to arrive. "Do you ever regret it?" Lisa asked. "Going nuclear like that?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Did I regret destroying my wife's career and reputation? Did I regret exposing Eric's pattern of abuse? Did I regret making sure that Derek faced consequences for his role in the cover-up? "No," I said finally. "I don't regret any of it. They made their choices, and I made mine. The only difference is that my choices were honest." Lisa smiled. "Good for you, Jake. Too many people let themselves get walked on because they are afraid of making waves. I'm not afraid of making waves anymore." As I walked home that evening, I reflected on how much my life had changed in the past year. I was single again, living in a house that felt like mine, working on projects that mattered to me, surrounded by people who respected me for who I was rather than what I could provide them. The old Jake had been afraid of conflict, afraid of hurting people's feelings, afraid of being seen as the bad guy. The new Jake understood that sometimes being the bad guy was exactly what the situation required. I'd learned that there was a difference between being cruel and being ruthless, between seeking revenge and seeking justice. I'd learned that some people would take advantage of your kindness until you taught them not to. Most importantly, I'd learned that I was capable of fighting back when fighting back was necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from Nate. "Beer and burgers tonight? Sarah's making her famous potato salad." I texted back, "On my way." As I drove to Nate's house, I found myself smiling for the first time in months. Not because I'd destroyed my ex-wife's life, but because I'd reclaimed my own. I'd stopped being a victim and started being the author of my own story. And that story, I realized, was just beginning. At Nate's house, surrounded by real friends who'd stood by me through the worst period of my life, I raised my beer in a toast. "To new beginnings," I said. "To new beginnings," they echoed. And for the first time since that Christmas party where everything had fallen apart, I felt genuinely happy about what came next. The people who'd betrayed me were living with the consequences of their choices. I was living with the consequences of mine. The difference was that I could sleep peacefully at night, knowing that I'd fought for myself when it mattered most. Justice had been served. The truth had been told. The games were over, and I had won.